Welcome to BT Sport Open Mat. I'm Adam Catterall. With me as ever, Nick Peet and the main man, Dan Hardy. A little bit of a different start to this week's show before we talk about Woodley versus Burns, because I'm sure you're fully aware, if you follow us all on social media, you will know that myself and Mr. Hardy have celebrated our birthdays recently. All the best people are born in May, so Nick Peet very kindly has agreed to sing happy birthday to both me and the reptile at the start of the show. After you, Nick, when you're ready.
Do you want Marilyn Monroe style or Stevie Wonder style?
Just thought I'd put you on the spot. Dan, did you have a nice birthday, mate?
I did, mate, absolutely. It was full of laughs and Lego, and that's nothing. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Exactly, mate. And now we've got some fights to get stuck into. This weekend, the Apex, the destination. Boys, we've been there. It's a sensational place, and all we were waiting for was Nevada to open up. Of course, they've got a meeting in the Nevada State Athletic Commission this week, and fingers crossed it all gets the green light, and therefore this weekend we roll back into Las Vegas. Woodley versus Burns is the headliner. Dan, what's in this for Tyron Woodley? I can see what's in it for Gilbert Burns, but does it just keep Tyron Woodley in the exact same place that he was previous?
It does a little bit, but then to be honest, I thought the Leon Edwards fight did as well, and I think that's a lot more risky fight for him. You know, if you look stylistically about the fight that he had and the fight that he's got, there are a lot of things that Leon Edwards can do that will cause him a lot of problems. He's very fast, he's good at fighting on the outside, he's very patient, he doesn't get hit very often, he's got good takedown defense and good scrambles. Then you look at Gilbert Burns on the other hand, and I mean, obviously there's the animosity between the two teams, which has always been prevalent in Florida. The fact that Gilbert Burns is a great jiu-jitsu player that doesn't mind putting himself in striking range because he can be taken down, it's a very, very different approach for Tyron Woodley. This is going to be a much more comfortable fight for him to do what he likes to do, which is basically stand with his back foot against the fence and wait for you to get too close, and then he'll club you with that right hand. This is all about using his wrestling to keep it standing, though, because he's going to be wanting to tangle with Gilbert Burns a lot less than he would with Leon.
Nick, it's an absolute stacked division. What an opportunity for Gilbert Burns coming off the back of a sensational victory against Demian Maia. He's got an opportunity where maybe somebody else should have got that opportunity before him to fight the former champion, but he's got it. It's this weekend, and if he puts in a performance, he propels himself in with the big boys.
Of course he does. If he manages to get a win over the former champion this weekend, then of course Gilbert Burns jumps near the top of the list in terms of potential suitors for KAMARU USMAN. You've got to love him taking this opportunity when it came along. You know, we're all in a weird situation right now, but Gilbert Burns looked like he's making the most of Leon Edwards' inability to take this fight with Tyron Woodley. And let's face it, Tyron Woodley never ever wanted to fight Rocky Edwards anyway. He couldn't wait to change this opponent. I kind of agree with you. You know, it doesn't do too much in terms of propelling either of them, for me, ahead of Rocky Edwards in the title picture. I think Rocky still remains the number one contender, possibly just behind MASVIDAL in terms of who should take on Usman next. But listen, it's got to be a statement performance for me. If Tyron Woodley doesn't turn up, if he doesn't do what we know Tyron Woodley is capable of against the guy that used to compete at lightweight, then for me it's kind of the end of what potentially is one final title push for Tyron Woodley.
Dan, where do you think Tyron's at mentally? Because we haven't seen him since the defeat to Usman, which was March of last year. He's been out doing all different aspects rather than fighting, rapping and what have you, concentrating on his music career. And some of the talk, when you see him interviewed, kind of avoiding talking about Leon Edwards and talking about other guys and what have you. Where do you think he's at? Do you actually think he really wants to be here?
I don't, honestly, and this is no slight on him. I always get heat from the fans because they think I don't like Tyron Woodley for some reason, which is not the case at all. I can just tell when someone doesn't like fighting, and I don't think he likes fighting. That's the reality of Tyron Woodley. I think I always break fighters down into three categories, and you're more or less of one of these three categories, and most people cross over all three, and that is fighter, athlete and martial artist. And I would say that fighter is at the bottom of the list for Tyron Woodley. He's a great athlete, he's a good martial artist, but as a fighter I don't really see it. And I think that's what we see with Tyron. He's doing the rapping thing, he's hanging out with the Fast and Furious guys. He wants to be famous more than he wants to be a fighter. I think he wants to be known as a fighter. So I think that, you know, he's going to look at this fight as a much safer fight for him than Leon Edwards. I think his focus is to get himself an opportunity to get the belt back, because he knows full well that he can beat anybody in this division. With the right hand that he's got and the wrestling skills that he's got, he can beat anybody in this division. Whether he wants it as much as other people or not is the question for me. And I don't know whether this is maybe this is not an easier fight for him to get up for, because Leon is a real serious threat there, whereas I think he might overlook Gilbert Burns, which might be his mistake.
Dan, we spoke about many fighters that flip-flop between weights. Gilbert's been at welterweight, down at lightweight. Now he's back at welterweight. He's on a 5-fight streak, 3 of those in welterweights. He seems to have found his home, and a sensational victory last time out against Damian Maia. What skill set does he bring to the fight at the weekend?
He brings a very, very good jiu-jitsu skill set, and that's why I think he's an interesting challenge for Woodley, because we know what Woodley's game is about. He uses his wrestling to keep the fight where he wants it, whether that's on the ground, whether he needs that blast double or he needs that right hand to put the fight on the floor. He's got it. In this fight, he's going to hang back and wait for Gilbert Burns to come to him, and the ground game of Gilbert Burns is kind of like his ace card, because Burns will come and try and strike with Woodley. Like he's going to walk forward, he's going to throw combinations of strikes, not the same kind of power that Woodley's got, not the same kind of speed, but that constant peppering is what we've seen slowly wear Tyron Woodley down. And I feel like as long as you're at the right range with Tyron Woodley, he needs a wind up for that right hand. Like, yes, he's got a right hand he can uncork against the fence. Think back to the Koscheck fight. But the times when I think Tyron Woodley is most dangerous is when he's got that little stagger step, that 2-1-2 that he uses when he knocked out Robbie Lawler, or the counter punches like when he caught Till. Gilbert's got to be cautious, but he can't let his work rate drop off, given the fact that he's fighting Tyron Woodley and the dangers that Tyron Woodley possesses, because it's the work rate that's one of his major weapons. If anything, Tyron Woodley's gonna try and avoid this fight at all costs, and Gilbert Burns is gonna have to go looking for him. But I just feel like, the thing is, you look at Gilbert Burns, like he stepped up to welterweight on short notice, and the first 2 guys he fights at welterweight, I think both of them were on short notice. The first one was SHEVCHENKO, who didn't have a loss on his record. He's an excellent kickboxer, a powerful striker, a very, very stubborn grappler as well. And Gilbert Burns just basically pressured him to a decision. He looked fantastic in that fight, and I was very impressed. Then he goes on and fights Gunnar Nelson, and I don't even need to say anything about that victory, because anyone beating Gunnar Nelson is impressive to me. And then, between that and his next MMA fight, he had several grappling matches, and he's going up against the likes of Sakuraba and Jake Shields and Eve Edwards, and good MMA veterans that have got great grappling skills. I feel like when he took that fight at short notice at welterweight, he felt great in the fight, and he realised that this is where he performs his best. And I just feel like in this weight class, he can continue being active. He can take fights on short notice. He can pressure people that do struggle with a pace in fights. This is an exciting opportunity for Gilbert Burns. It really is. I'm really, really high on Gilbert Burns, especially as a welterweight. And I think he's got all the skills to cause Tyron Woodley some problems. The ace card of Tyron Woodley is always that right hand. And if he catches you with that, it doesn't matter who you are. Middleweights, even some light heavyweights, I think he'd knock him out. But there are lots of ways for Gilbert Burns to win this fight.
It's an incredibly stacked division. As we mentioned earlier on, it's a wonderful opportunity for Gilbert Burns to propel himself in with the big guys. Dan, regarding the landscape at welterweight, Usman's the champ. We've discussed on previous programmes, we want to see Usman versus Masvidal, but a little bit of noise this week from Masvidal's camp that they might be looking at running back the Diaz fight. How does all this play out? Can you see Masvidal going down the Diaz route? And if he does, what then does Usman do?
I think there are obvious fights for Usman in the division. I don't know whether Usman's got the name to draw the big fights right now. And I think the reason that we're seeing Masvidal talking about Diaz is because he knows that there's the same amount of money to be made when you fight KAMARU Usman. Yes, you can get the welterweight title. But to be honest, the BMF belt is probably worth more than the welterweight title right now because of who's wearing it.
Absolutely.
And that's the reality of a title belt. It's validated by the person that's wearing it. When Daniel Cormier was the lightweight champion, we all knew that John Jones was better. And that's unfortunate for Daniel Cormier, but that's the reality of the situation. In this circumstance, this is not about who's the better fighter, because KAMARU Usman might definitely be the better fighter than Masvidal when it comes down to it. but people want to see Masvidal fight, and that's the difference.
Yep.
It's the star power that Masvidal's got, and I think he looks at Usman and sees that the risk to reward ratio is way off the charts in comparison to someone like a Nate Diaz. Like I said when we spoke before, like, he walked past me on the way to the octagon for the Diaz fight, and I could tell that he was chilling. He was cool. Like, I mean, he couldn't have looked more relaxed.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, when he walked out to fight Askren, although he had the same kind of energy about him, it wasn't the same person. Like, he knew the danger of fighting Askren, and I just didn't see that in his eyes when he was fighting Diaz. Like he's smart enough to know where the paydays are. He's smart enough to know where he can go and cash a check without taking too much damage. And there's no reason why he shouldn't go and get that second Diaz fight, or even, you know, see if he can get the CONOR fight. There are a lot of interesting ones out there for him, and Masvidal's kind of alluring to himself right now, and that BMF belt has just added add an exclamation mark to that.
Yep.
Nick, if Usman isn't going to be fighting Masvidal, and I know that we're going to get a lot of this from people overseas because we're big Rocky Edwards fans and we know where he should be, then there is no other fight really for Leon, is there? It has to be him versus Usman if Usman's not fighting Masvidal for the title.
Absolutely. You know, obviously the golden ticket for all these guys, for Usman, for Rocky Edwards, and even for Masvidal, is Conor McGregor. What's Conor going to do next? Is Conor even able to fight during this period in time when there's no bums on seats, so the UFC are taking a big hit financially in terms of what they would usually generate in revenue, certainly when a Conor McGregor fight goes down. But take Conor out of the equation, then yeah, absolutely. If Masvidal is going in a different direction, is going to go back in with Diaz, then 100% KAMARU Usman should honour what he's said previously, and he said himself that Rocky Edwards is next in line. He deserves to fight. Look at Rocky Edwards' win record, you know, and he's just been swerved by Tyron Woodley. I know the opportunity came for Woodley to move out the way, and Rocky refused to go to the US, which in time now has proven to be a shrewd decision, because even the rearranged fight got cancelled, of course. But Rocky Edwards has got to be the guy that gets in with KAMARU Usman next, if it isn't Masvidal. He deserves the opportunity. He's worked harder than anybody to get at the top of those 170 rankings, and you know what? I think the second fight's a completely different fight. I think it's a brilliant fight, and if need be, let's do a Fight Island. We're talking about main event for Fight Island. That would be perfect. Title fight, main event, Usman versus Rocky Edwards. You're welcome.
Dan, where does Colby Covington sit in all this, obviously coming off the back of the defeat to Usman in December?
I mean, I think he's a very relevant fighter in this division. Unfortunately for him, though, he's going to have to look down the rankings in order to find his next opponent, because, I mean, he's still sat at number 2 right behind Tyron Woodley. And I just think that, I mean, he's not going to get the rematch with Usman no matter how much trash he talks. Tyron Woodley would take that fight because I think he feels like it's a good matchup for him, but I think he feels a safer matchup is Gilbert Burns, which is what he's got. So I think he would have chosen Gilbert Burns over Covington. I mean, you know, the obvious beef between Masvidal and Covington's there. The other interesting challenge for Covington, in my opinion, is, you know, Wonderboy's still floating around in the top 5, and I've not heard much about him, and no one's mentioned his name for a while. And I think part of that is because everyone likes a bit of trash talking, and the welterweight division is lively with it at the moment. And Wonderboy kind of he just doesn't bring that element to the octagon. But the fact that he doesn't, the fact that, you know, he's a polarizing character in one way, and Colby's the polarizing character in the other. It'd be very easy for people to choose a side if Covington was fighting Wonderboy, and it's a very straightforward fight for Covington as well. He's got to close distance, which allows Wonderboy to do what he does best in counter-strike. I mean, that's the matchup that I'd make, just because they're both close enough to the top of the division, and they're both in need of an opponent.
Exciting division, welterweight. Can't wait for some of these matchups to get made. Let's get back to the weekend, because Woodley taking on Burns is the main event. There's loads of other fights as well to get excited about. As you look at the co-main, Dan, between Saki and Ivanov, how do you see this? Because I look at it on paper and I see it very 50-50. Maybe Saki's he's a little bit better on the feet. How do you see it going down?
I always find myself not underestimating a guy like BLAGOY Ivanov, and there are reasons for that. First of all, he made his UFC debut against JDS, and I thought he looked very good. He's got that kind of style where he's just, you know, he never seems particularly fazed by anything. But you know him as a heavyweight. He's always up against it. He's always fighting guys that are bigger, stronger, faster, more powerful, and he's found his way to the UFC out of his technical abilities. The other thing as well, he's got that gnarly scar in his chest, and that's not an accidental scar. That's not. Like, this guy might be indestructible. He might have been a Bond villain in a past life. I just can't underestimate the guy. I've never seen him smile. I've never seen him laugh, but I've also never seen him particularly fazed by anything either. And yeah, I mean, Augusto Sakai, he's got a bit, he's got a decent record. He's, 1 loss, 1 draw on his record and 14 wins. I don't know. BLAGOY Ivanov's a scary individual in my eyes. I just can't count him out.
Never rule against the Bond baddie. Nick, from Catterall and Chikagian's point of view, you've just been in a whirlwind with one Shevchenko, and then another one pops up, sticks her hands up, and she fancies a fight with you as well. You know what I mean?
All respect in the world to Antonina Shevchenko. This girl took on her sister for the title last time out. Antonina's trying to leapfrog these flyweight rankings in style, and she's obviously seen something in the performance of her sister, the champion, against Chookagian, and she thinks, you know what, I can do the same, and I can get myself into the top 5. So all respect in the world to her. But listen, Chookagian want the 2 Shevchenko sisters having scalped her within a 12-month period. So I like this fight. I think it's flames, and I'm not surprised really. It's top of the prelims.
Dan, just finally, regarding the dimensions of the octagon, John Morgan, one of our good journalist friends, tweeted out that there's that the octagon at the Apex is actually smaller than what we're used to. It's normally 30 foot. This one at the weekend, where Woodley and Burns will be throwing down in, is a 25-foot octagon. How do you think that might affect the way that the fight plays out?
Well, I think, if you look at the main and co-main event, they're the 2, in my opinion, that are going to be most affected by the size difference. It doesn't sound a lot, but when you compare the 2 octagons together, the floor space is considerably different. You've got to think, if you're a heavyweight, if you're Augusto Sakai and you're 6'4" with a 77-inch reach, the extra space around you is beneficial, because you can use that to move into as you're trying to jab the face off your opponent who's 5'11" and trying to walk you down. You're going to hit your back against the fence much, much quicker in a 25-foot octagon if you're that kind of size individual. And same goes for the main event. I know they're welterweights, but if I'm Gilbert Burns and I'm trying to close distance against Tyron Woodley as much as possible, you don't want to be on the end of Tyron Woodley's punching range, and you don't want to be, you don't want to be trying to chase him down, because you're constantly walking towards that power. Whereas if you can back him up against a fence and then force your way into his punching range, you're only going to have to deal with that power once or twice. When if the octagon's bigger, you're going to have to deal with it much, much more. I think it suits I think it suits Gilbert Burns, and I think it suits BLAGOY Ivanov, but both of these fighters that there's less room for their opponent to move into, and less space to be exploited. It suits their game plans.
There you go then. It's all going down in the early hours of the morning on BT Sport. Make sure you come and join us for that. Leave your comments in the comments section of the fights that you're excited about seeing this weekend. Those Woodley and Burns go at it at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll have a few interviews coming your way as well this week, so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll catch you real soon.